Okay, we are live here around, what is this, 2:28 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday. What were they out about 90 minutes later last week? I think the regional rankings around 1:30 they got released today. If you're watching our host chat show, this is pre-recorded, obviously, but nonetheless, if you're watching live or even recorded, we're going to go through the regional rankings right now. 1 through 10 from the second East Regional Rankings release and discuss for about 15 minutes what it all means, what your team's hopes are or aren't at this point. So we're going to go and go one at a time. And JB, I'll let you kind of extrapolate once we get team by team on the board, your thoughts on their chances, what you're thinking about their rankings, etc. So here we go. Let us start with number 1, and Salisbury remains the number 1 team with a 501 strength of schedule, wins against Wesley, and I am forgetting the second team. Oshkosh, thank you. That's why I'm forgetting, because they're not in our region, but they do remain regionally ranked. They have William Patterson remaining at 2-7, so their strength of schedule is actually going to fall below 500, and that's an interesting problem. Yeah. Regionally ranked opponents matter here, obviously, and being 2-0 is the best of the bunch in the East. So what's your thought on Salisbury?
Well, I think Salisbury has a shot at maybe not a number 1 seed, Frank, but I do feel like they're at least strong enough to be paired as number 2 with maybe someone from the South. I don't know. When you look at the overall rankings, there's 3 undefeated teams in the East. There are 2 only in the North, and there are 4 in the South, and only 2 in the West. So based on that, I could see something happen maybe with like a Muhlenberg or Wheaton getting paired off with maybe one of the West region teams as a 1, like Whitewater. But Salisbury's numbers there, I mean, if Oshkosh can hang on, although they'll probably drop out because I think they have to play Whitewater in their season finale, so that's probably a loss that takes them off the board. So Salisbury, with really only 1 regionally ranked opponent, the chances of them being a 1 seed seem to be pretty tough to me, Frank.
Okay, with you still on the screen, we will attempt to go to the next step here, and that is number 2, Wesley. 560 strength of schedule. They had lost to Salisbury, and they have won against 2 teams. I probably shouldn't name both right now because it will give away a little bit here, but they did beat Delaware Valley, which we assume is in the rankings here. And JB, they seem to be protecting Wesley by adding the extra regionally ranked opponent win, which didn't count last week, remember? Yeah, it just seems a little interesting that that's happening here, but the 560 strength of schedule will drop also with Christopher Newport. We should also mention, because we just said it, Delaware Valley is at number 3, 8-1, 528 strength of schedule, 1-1. The win is against Wesley. The loss is against Wesley. The win is against, we'll say, Stevenson, who is actually ranked in this list, and that's not a surprise to many people, so that's why I bring it up now. So there's Wesley, there's Delaware Valley. Any surprise that there's no change there?
No, not really. I mean, even though in our conversation last week with Greg Thomas, the D3Football.com bracketologist expert, and hopefully he's watching. Hey, Greg. Even though it's hard, you don't want to pair these 2 together. It seems like they're kind of just attached at the hip before overtime game will do that to you, and just their history track record. I think the NJAC and the MAC are getting a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here. Honestly, I would have thought that maybe at the 9-0 mark we could have seen Union crack into the top 3. Doesn't seem like they're going to let them do that. Maybe that'll change over the weekend, but these 2 teams seem to be just kind of 2A and B basically.
With Widener having a 5-4, Delaware Valley's strength of schedule should remain right around the 528 level, not far from 530 or 525 on either side.
It's not bad, yeah.
It's good, but the problem is they have a loss, and they have a loss, and they have a loss. And so I see it that way because when you look at number 4, and that's a Union right now at 9-0, 496 strength of schedule, which should go up against 6-3 RPI, and regionally ranked opponents. They are still going to be 1-0 in the regionally ranked opponents now. This, I think, is a table set scenario for Union to at least go above Delaware Valley. I truly believe Union will go somewhere between Wesley and Delaware Valley. I don't think they're going to put them above Wesley, but I think Union is assured a home game with a win versus RPI. Would you disagree with that?
No, and I think they're probably even assured a home game, even if for some reason they trip up and lose at 9-1. I do feel like Union will get a better situation seeding and bracket wise if they can go 10-0. Because arguably you could say, if you look at their resume, it's not that much different from Salisbury's. Maybe they could catapult over these two teams, but it does seem like Wesley is getting a little more of the benefit of the doubt, maybe based on some more historical performance. Because man, when we watched them play Kane last weekend, it's not the same kind of Wolverine team we're used to seeing, but they still managed to get the win.
They tread lightly versus Montclair State. They tread lightly against Salisbury to a degree, but obviously Salisbury is a good team. They against Kane, against Endicott. It's been an adventure of a season for Wesley, but they are still 8-1, 7-1 in Division III. Number 5 could surprise some people, and here it comes. Brockport. We'll go big screen to show you that Brockport is a 540. 540 strength of schedule for Brockport with a 1-0. That's against Cortland. They have Morrisville State remaining at 5-4, so their strength of schedule may drop only very slightly, or may increase even by a couple thousandths of a point. You should stick around that 540 range generally. There's a leapfrog that occurred, and we'll include what that leapfrog is right now, and that's Western New England at 500 strength of schedule, which dropped off after last week's game, and a 1-0 of a regionally ranked opponent scenario. That we're beginning to get a clue as to who they ranked, perhaps in that number 10 spot, since we've left the mystery with Wesley and Western New England. And we ask ourselves, who's the common opponent? Yeah. So, if you're smart enough, you know who's there. Yeah. Husson 4-5 is who's remaining. So they could drop below 500 strength of schedule. Is that enough of a reason, do you think, to jump Brockport over Western New England, who is technically undefeated in Division III, whereas Brockport is not?
I think once again it's some of the conference reputations sort of taking hold here. I think the winning the Empire 8 is definitely looked upon as a pretty significant feat, and I think if you look at the makeup of the of the rack, that these people are they tend to lean towards the Wesleys and Del Vals and the Brockports. So I'm not surprised, but to be fair to Coach Mangoni and the Golden Eagles, they have been playing great football, and they have looked really good, especially in the last few weeks, taking care of Cortland in that comeback. They took had a tough time putting Alfred away, but they took care of business, and they're playing great on all sides of the ball. They're ranked back in the top 25. Things are definitely looking up for the Golden Eagles. So you could very much make the case that they deserve to be in that 5 spot ahead of mostly New England teams that typically go one and done in the tournament.
So we have an assessment right now that a Golden Eagle is greater than a Golden Bear. Is that what's going on here?
They definitely get more altitude. I'll say that.
I'll give you that. And in this set of rankings, indeed they did. Cortland is an interesting case here. Let's take a closer look at Cortland. 8-1, 466 strength of schedule, which is low, and probably is the lowest one you'll see on this board of 10. They have the loss, and it's a regionally ranked loss against Brockport. A close loss at that. They have the Cortica game against Ithaca coming up next at 7-2. So their strength of schedule should improve remarkably, but their profile right now is nothing special. And I hate to say that to Cortland fans, but it's not.
Yeah, I honestly, Frank, think that even if they win Cortica, the chances of them getting an at-large berth are next to none. Just the profile, the lack of a regional ranked opponent win, especially now that Ithaca has dropped off the map from what we can tell. So, yeah, I think there's only one team getting picked out of the East, and fortunately for Wesley fans, they're playing against a down captain squad this weekend. Should be heavily favored. I know that there's some other teams out there at the bottom of this board that might be thinking, hey, well, if Wesley or Cortland loses, we're first in line. Ain't gonna happen, guys. Sorry.
Well,
Chances of it are very slim.
one such team is coming up next, and that is a new entrant to our list here. Hobart, 7-2, 600 strength of schedule, highest strength of schedule in this batch. 1-1 against regionally ranked opponents right now. That is a loss against Union and a win against Brockport. Now, Hobart has created a number of issues for this committee or this rack because where do you order them? Do you put them between Union and Brockport somehow? Because you could justify that despite that extra loss. But they're saying essentially strength of schedule and regionally ranked opponent scenario, maybe a double counting scenario here that basically Brockport's helping their strength of schedule remarkably, and Union, their loss, is helping their strength of schedule remarkably, and because of it, and because 0-9 Rochester is next, they don't deserve to leapfrog in that manner. It would have been a huge leapfrog to go from unranked to 5th or 6th, depending on how they handled it. If they had started ranking Hobart last week, it would have been a different story, I think. But that said, as you just said, Hobart, while it's nice to see you on the board, it's not going to mean much at the end of the day, barring complete upheaval in Pool C ranks. That means basically Wesley loses to a 2-7 CNU team. Cortland loses to Ithaca. Let's see. Whitewater beats Oshkosh and other carnage in the WIAC occurs. Bethel, Redlands, and Wartburg lose. John Carroll loses to Baldwin Wallace. Muhlenberg loses. I mean,
Susquehanna loses. It would have to be a total national, catastrophe for anything to pan out. Honestly, when I look at the board here, Frank, Hobart's best chance of postseason is playing against that Cortland team in the New York State Bowl. Hopefully, we'll be able to announce that after the weekend. That would be a great matchup, irrespective of how it goes. I mean, I could see, maybe Cortland squeaking in as a 9-1 team if they beat Ithaca, but the chances of that, looking at the other regions and the fact there's only 5 at large bids, is so slim. You have Redlands at 3 in the West. That's a team that's probably taken one of the Pool C's. Susquehanna at 8-1 is looking good for one of those. John Carroll's at 8-1 is looking good for one of those. Not to mention North Central. I mean, there's just too many teams and too few spots. I pretty much would take it to the bank. Wesley, don't screw it up and lose to CNU this weekend, and you're in. But that's all the East is going to get.
Stevenson is up next behind Hobart with the win versus Wilkes, and so they displaced Wilkes. Moved to 0-2 against regionally ranked, though, because Bridgewater in the South is number 3 right now. They lost to them, and they lost to number 3 in the East, Delaware Valley. We won't belabor this. Endicott at 7-2, 508 strength of schedule. Their loss to Wesley and to Western New England. Others considered. We have 6 up here. Framingham State may be the next one out because with that 591, the problem is that Endicott had beaten them.
They're in the tournament no matter what. Yep. So they're going. They have a Pool A from the MASCAC. We know this bottom half, Ithaca, Wilkes, and WestCon, they're playing for other bowl bids that don't start with NCAA. Really, the big question mark is whether or not it'll be MIT or WPI. Maybe Springfield by some far-fetched, possibility, winning the New Max Pool A bid. So one of these 2 teams on the right here will be in the tournament. We'll find out Saturday. Framingham definitely is, and will probably play on the road against any one of the teams in the top 4 or 5 to the left of your screen. So the Rams are in. Just a matter of where they're going, and just draw a 500-mile circle around the Worcester area, and you can kind of figure it out.
Let's go back through these real quick here in review. Number 1, Salisbury at 8-0 with a middling strength of schedule, but a very good regionally ranked opponent's record. Wesley, number 2 at 560, which is high for a strength of schedule, but will drop off again, like Salisbury's will. A 2-1 regionally ranked opponent's record, very good also. Delaware Valley, number 3, 528 is very good. A strength schedule. Widener shouldn't hurt that much. 1-1 against regionally ranked opponents. But Union's got a bigger opponent at number 4 coming up. And we'll just get those back up there. There's Union. I love when it does that. Yep.
Yeah. I will say this, Frank. I'm sticking to my stump of the we're going to see something similar to the 2012 playoff rankings where the East did not have a number 1 seed.
Oh, I think you're right now. Salisbury's not justifying it with the strength of schedule at all, and that's the problem.
Yeah, especially with Wheaton and Mount Union in the north. I mean, Wheaton being based in Illinois is interesting because they can be paired up pretty easily with a West team like a Whitewater. You could see possibly a Muhlenberg, getting a second seed in either a Mount Union or a Mary Hardin Baylor bracket, but I just don't see the overall the strength of the East really justifying its own pod. We'll see what happens come Sunday when we talk with the committee chair for what is this, like the 10th or 11th year in a row. And hopefully we can get some candid answers out of Jim, who's never been afraid to speak plainly. So,
12th straight season, actually. We've done it every year that we've been on the air. So Union at 9-0, number 4, 496 should go up from the RPI game at 1-0 also in the regionally ranked opponents. Brockport 540 should remain about where it is with that loss, so they should remain below Union no matter what happens here. 1-0 with the win against Cortland. Number 6, Western New England 500, and it shouldn't get any better, really, with Husson still on their schedule, but they picked up a regionally ranked win against Endicott in the meantime. Cortland, a very middling profile with 466 strength of schedule and no regionally ranked opponent wins, but 1 loss. Ithaca will help them on Saturday. Hobart, 7-2, very strong strength of schedule in a 1-1 regionally ranked opponent situation. That strength of schedule is about to take a nosedive against Rochester, 0-9. Stevenson, 7-2, 542. Again, a strong strength of schedule at this point of the season, but 0-2 against regionally ranked opponents. And Lycoming should drop that strength of schedule slightly. And number 10, Endicott, 7-2, middling 508 strength of schedule, 0-2 against regionally ranked opponents. Nichols will help the strength of schedule, but Endicott's playing for pride and bowl games right now, as you said, as is Stevenson, as is Hobart, and as is probably Cortland. I just don't see Cortland really getting much of a look, even with a win against Ithaca on this Saturday. JB, last thoughts before we close this show out?
The last thought is unfortunately not a real super positive one. It seems like this time around it's more about who you lost to versus who you beat. With maybe the exception of teams like Salisbury, Union, and Western New England who haven't lost, but they're still not necessarily getting, well, at least in the case of Union, and maybe you can make an argument for Western New England too, that they're not really up as high as maybe they could be for the undefeated record. I think the Liberty League once again is getting a little disrespected on one hand, even though they've got two teams in the top 10. But we'll see how this weekend pans out. I'm going to stick with my prediction that there will not be an East number 1 seed. It will be a tournament like we saw in 2012, and that Wesley will be the one team from the East region that will get the Pool C bid, and that's it. Look,
if Hobart beats Rochester and Ithaca beats Cortland this weekend, and Ithaca ends up ranked in the final rankings, to me, with Union strength of schedule probably surpassing Salisbury's at the end of the day, I can't really say that Union wouldn't deserve to go above Salisbury. But it would take the committee a set of real cojones to, at that point, jump Union 3 spots when they haven't really done anything to jump Union already. And that bothers me a little bit that they didn't start the move this week, because you could have
Yeah, I
justified
mean,
moving Union above Del Valle.
Union's beaten two top 25 teams this season, and they're going into a big rivalry game against a team that's probably going to an ECAC bowl game, probably. But yeah, I mean, the Dutchmen are kind of getting a little dissed here, Frank, as is the league, I think, to a certain extent. But hey, at the end of the day, it is what it is, and we'll see how it pans out with the new MAC getting into the fold. We'll see where the MASCAC teams get placed, and we'll go from there.
Friday around 11 a.m. Lightning prediction. Sunday we will have Jim Catanzaro right after the selections are announced on the NCAA website. Probably around 6:30, 7 o'clock. We'll have to check what time that is. Monday, ECAC pairings announced on this show, and also we'll have the New York Bowl pairing as well, to the degree that we can get that in time. Then also our normal shows. Thursday, though, tomorrow, this will drop on Wednesday, obviously, live and recorded. Thursday, interviews with Coast Guard's Bill George and Grant Tragney of RPI, senior co-captain there. You'll want to stay tuned. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of the day and week.
All right, that's a wrap.